imagine it, and if you know the area, the planes would touch down in the vicinity of the Woodford Hill Agricultural Station Center and then cut across to the back of St. Andrews High School. Now, this is one reason why the St. Andrews High School was abandoned and the new um, Northeast Comprehensive was built, because the airstrip would have been in the way. They had to buy a lot of land, which they got various monies from Trinidad and banks and other sources to be able to buy, for instance, the whole of Londonderry Estate and areas like Joe Burton and all that behind Wesley. So they would try to avoid the Wesley village. But there were other technicalities that came up, and that was, for instance, the cone. I'm sorry that I don't have the technical facilities to
Yes.
put each plan on the screen. I did a program for uh, GIS early last year. We spent a day filming and all, and I don't know for what reason they completed the documentary, and for some reason they never aired it. Somebody may have told them, don't air it, I'm not sure, but it certainly did not come out. But that documentary had lots of, we went on the site, we had lots of maps and pictures. So to cut a long story short, with the UWP plan, yes, all those things that they had hoped for in terms of not destroying so many houses and giving it a different angle. But the problem was that every airport has to have a cone of arrival and departure. And part of that cone, and you think it's far away, but in aircraft movement terms, it's not. Part of the cone was on the ridge, covering over the ridge of where Penville is. And a lot of the people who were assessing the situation didn't think this was too satisfactory. And in fact, with the present airport, international airport that's being constructed, a move had to be made to ensure that the cone did not touch any part of Dominica or go off over any high part of Dominica. So one of the benefits of this plan, which was then put together in the 2000s, 2019 going on to 20, when all of that was being discussed, is to make the angle slightly down to the southeast, so that when you approached from the northwest, you were actually in the channel between Guadeloupe and Dominica. You had a clear arrival point and a clear takeoff point over the end of Cabana Beach. And that if winds were suitable, a plane could come in from the southeast and land from that angle over Cabana Beach, and then come in and taxi to the runway, down the runway to the airport terminal. So I'm hoping that you're catching this, because I don't have the maps in front of me, but essentially this was the aim, and this is what is happening now. So what was done essentially is they took the Alexander Gibb report of their ideal route and landing and airport, and they adapted it, they changed it, they made it shorter at the northwestern end, and that is the runway that we have today. There were many issues involved, because Dominica is a mountainous island. They had to find the flattest corner of Dominica, one that was away from the main mountain range, certainly away from Diablotin and all the other mountains that run in that angle down the backbone of Dominica. So they avoided Mono Diab, they avoided Diablotin, and all of the space to the north of those mountains is open land all along Woodford Hill Beach and Lassois Point and Compton Point. All of that is flat open land. So it would not provide any threat or intervention. for the airport. So that was what was finally decided. And the thing was that one of the main challenges is they had 7 watersheds to cross. Now that included 2 branches of the Eden River. It included ravines that went down to the sea, like Craibo Gutter, Priest Gutter, Bottom Wesley, Big Bottom, all of these traditional names of, of, um, of ravines and streams. All of these, of course, then had to be planned for drainage. All of that has been done. It's over and done with. And then the challenge was, how do we get these thousands, if not millions, of tons of of cubic meters of aggregate to put on the runway and to seal the runway and the areas where the planes would park, the parking aprons, and all of that. And that was a big challenge because even the UWP was looking at that, because in years earlier, the Canadian government had provided consultants to look for somewhere to get rock. Mm-hmm. And the Canadian consultants in 1970, who had to redo the Melville Hall airstrip, because in the 10 years since it was opened, the potholes and various things, the quality of that airstrip had declined. And what the Canadians did, that is, their name was the Janine Company from Canada, they decided that there was exposed rock at Baie-Blanche. That's where our Baie-Blanche story starts. Because the exposed rock, they could blast and bring it down by an area that is still, older people will remember, the back of Russia.
Oops. We're having some difficulties there, so Mr. Dr. Honeychurch, so let us try to get you back on. You're making a very important point just now. We're just talking about giving a historic perspective of our journey as a people towards the construction of an international airport. And before you went off, and with us, can you just check your mic? You're off? I'm not hearing you, so
yes. I see.
Yeah.
Both. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I want you to walk us back. I like to walk forward, but I want you to walk us back to just before you actually got cut off. You want to make a reference to the Baie-Blanche area. The importance of the Baie-Blanche area to some reconstruction effort at the Melville Airport. So you want to take it from there.
Okay, for the if I got you right.
Yeah.
Because
well,
the rain is on.
Yeah, we were talking about repairs to the
you're talking about Melville Hall?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. Melville Hall. So a survey had been done for an airport for Dominica back in 1944.
No. I was talking. You were talking about Dr. Honeychurch, about the Baie-Blanche area, and
yes,
yeah, and the
blast. You want me to go back to that?
Yes, because you got cut off. Yeah.
All right. Fine. Good. So there was this company called Janine that had the contract to completely resurface Melville Hall, which was about 4,800 feet at the beginning. They even had a temporary airstrip that they constructed first, running where you take the road to get to the entrance of the terminal and so. But that's on the side. After 10 years of use, from 1961 to 1970, there was need for a completely new surface. So the Janine Company looked in areas along the north because they would have had to transport all of this, and they decided on the junction, which is called Debouche, of those two rivers. There was already a bridge that had been built with material from that section. And then they actually blasted. There was months of blasting the rock on both sides of the Pegua River. The
And
side where the
doctor,
yeah
if you were to actually just take a pause for one minute, 1 second there. So you're saying the exact area where actually the quarrying activity, which is now halted, is been
no
undertaken is been undertaken to actually go towards the completion of the runway of the now international airport. You're saying that same site was used to extract rocks for the resurfacing of the Melbourne Airport surface?
close to it, but not
Okay,
exactly on it,
okay, close to it. Okay, fine.
because the problem that they're having now is having to remove, thousands of cubic meters of clay. Now, the thing we must understand that in 1970, you're dealing with an airport that's only 4,800 feet
Yes.
with a little parking area apron at Melville Hall. And so they took their material because they did not want to dig in. They took their material from right close to the bridge. So you can actually see parts of the remains of where they were blasting in that area. And then they went across the river, because directly across the river from there is large quantities of this particular rock that they required for making the chippings to provide the aggregate for the airport. Now,
I think if I were to ask you though, there must be something about the rocks in terms of maybe the density of the rocks, then that would have made the rocks there actually ideal for that kind of activity in terms of construction.
yes, I just want to give you this geological map of Dominica. Now, as you can see, there are very many different types of rock, because when you're building an airport, surfacing an airport, or any other major operation like that, you would require hard rock. It's called igneous rock, and it has a number of varieties like basalt and andesite. But essentially, it is a rock that has come out from the volcano heated, and then it cools and it hardens. It's like iron. It's very, very hard.
Almost like metallic type like.
Yes, and that is the rock that they were looking for. Now, that is where they got their material from. Now, there is similar rock in another part down the valley. That is the famous now named Crapo Hall, which is really the St. Mary Valley. And that is where, back in 1998 and so, previous government was looking for their aggregate. A lot of it was on private lands. Some of it they would have had, and they were planning to go into the forest reserve and delineate an area where they could get this rock and put it in the grind it into chippings that then could be used for the airport. That was their source. But then we're dealing once again with trying to find a source that was reasonably close to the airport. And because of the limited size of that particular source, it would take much longer to process. And I suppose I was not in any way involved, but I suppose they decided, all right, Belleville Hall was able to get their aggregate from up in the higher reaches of the Pegua Valley in the vicinity of Dewash, so that if they dig, because remember, it's a ridge,
Right.
and the, the interior of the ridge is this solid volcanic rock. We must understand in the geology of Dominica that Dominica has this very hard base. And then other volcanoes, other erosions happened on top of it and covered the original hard base of it. There again, we need a program to illustrate to people the geology base of Dominica. Take, for instance, another source that was considered earlier, but that was for road building. All the governments of Dominica have spent millions of dollars promising the people of Petit Soufriere that they will get them a road to go to Rosalie. But the problem has always been, once the work begins, that the heavy duty iron hard rock that is on the ridge that is between Petit Soufriere and Rosalie has been almost impossible for any kind of excavating equipment to break through. It's called, it even has a name from way back history times.
Washmark.
Washmark, yes. And it is iron, it's almost like iron. Now, if it had been possible, maybe that's right overlooking the sea, there would be no river to go down, you would be maybe able to get that aggregate, and it would be as strong, and you would at the same time be building a road to link Petit Soufriere with Rosalie. But that was not to be, and it can't be done now because of the distance to Wesley, for instance. Another option that was considered in the early days, from what I understand of planning all of this, is that if you put a ramp at the end of Woodford Hill Beach by Lassois Point on Woodford Hill, put a ramp and you get barges from bringing aggregate, the same heavy duty hard rock aggregate from Collyho and Ascola and those quarries on the west coast. And then the barge would bring all of that around the northern tip of Dominica by Capuchin and so, and bring it to Woodford Hill, and it would be offloaded just as the barges offload it when they go to St. Martin or the Virgin Islands or wherever they sell their stuff. But I notice, and I have not been informed why, but I noticed that the idea of the ramp was abandoned. I think perhaps they were concerned about the depth of the weather. But Van Geest, the Geest company that owned the whole of Woodford Hill, they used to bring in their heavy equipment at Woodford Hill on similar barges. So there was a possibility. But the state of play now appears to be that if you're going to cover those thousands of cubic feet of cubic yards or meters that are required for the airport, both the runway itself, almost 1,000 feet, 9,500 feet, plus all of the auxiliary runway area for taxiing, plus the apron for the parking of aircraft, that you will certainly need a much larger amount. And so the debate continues. I mean, I do respect the work and the efforts that are being done by people like Auguste, Gary Auguste, and Brisbane, and others who are concerned about the environmental matters, and also the issues that have been raised. But you see, with every such airport in Dominica, it's not a clear case of opinion. The people who are complaining environmentally, I respect them because they have put together all of their arguments and also their information. But there have always been, in the days of the previous attempts, people who just want to put a spoke in a wheel and block that government, whichever government it is, from constructing the international airport. Because for over 50 years, Dominicans have been wanting and demanding, they want to fly in and out easily. And there's always been this contention. The people who are against the particular government that's in power will raise all kinds of issues in the hope that the airport will not be built and will not take place, because that then would kibosh, so to speak, the scheme of the government in power, and people would look at an airport as an achievement, and therefore, you know what will happen? People will then, at the next election, vote for the government that provided them with an airport.
Okay, I'm
Yes.
if I would ask you, Doc, to take a pause there, and just to go back what you just said, that there was no element of networking between you and I, relative to what you just said. So I want to say that that you were not induced to say what you just said in terms of
No. You,
uh,
we have never even met or spoken about any airport.
right.
So I'm just following what has happened over time, right? Because there's always this contest about who is going to construct an international airport.
Let us
When
let us
when we
for one,
yes,
in terms of the debauched area, and certainly the government has to ensure that in terms of the mitigation practices to mitigate against undue environmental impact, like sedimentation of the river, etc., and those things can be done, and they're being done. But do you want to actually give a perspective as to what can be done to ensure that the element of reforesting and ensuring that in the long run that the environment can be enhanced and preserved? What is your
well,
advice on that in terms of
yes.
yeah?
Well, the thing is that it has been left to be pretty late in the day. The work is going on. The issues have been raised. I have already made the point that when you compare the accessing of the rock back in 1970, there was not this deep excavation. There was a lot. It went down in the river, and the river went brown. But you see, in those days, without internet and without the heightened kind of political tensions of the day, this was not as major. It was an issue, but it wasn't as major an issue. I very much, as an environmental person with environmental interests, I very much, and I have to be frank here, I very much agree with what the environmentalists have raised. A while ago, Annie Edwards, former chief planning officer, she produced a map of all the watersheds and the concern that the excavation would go into the neighboring watersheds and all the effects that it would have. And we must remember that even when the previous government was planning their airport, their source was also going to go into the Northern Forest Reserve after they had accessed all of what they could access from private lands in that area. So it's a difficult, very difficult issue, but I want to bring in one thing here. People underestimate. I know you have months of total mess, but people underestimate the capacity of Dominica to regrow itself. For instance, I myself complained to Dame Charles back in 1988-89 when I saw the damage at the freshwater lake. when they were doing the hydro extension. They cut every tree around the freshwater lake. They dug into the lake and they dumped all of the stuff that was in the lake. That is all of the so-called tarish, pyroclastic flow, the silt that had gathered over thousands of years. They created a quarry on the side of the lake to provide a rock for the rock dam, big dam that exists there, but you wouldn't even know. And people go there now and they say, oh, land of beauty, it's all so beautiful. They take pictures of freshwater lake. But I have slides of freshwater lake when it was being excavated and when the quarry was being made. And it is amazing how the land has recovered over the years. The other thing that happened in that area was an entire river was diverted. The Clarks River comes out of the base of the Bury Lake. And this river was dammed. The dam is still there if you walk up in the bush. And then it was diverted by excavating a canal that would send that water into the freshwater lake that would then provide more water for the hydro, because they were increasing hydro generation. They were putting a new hydro plant at Lodi itself. They were extending the one at Trafalgar. They were sending water down to Padu so that they could provide electricity for the entire East Coast, which they did from Petit Savan all the way to Atkinson. And to get that done, they had to excavate and do this to be able to provide more water for the hydro scheme. So here's an example where today we go and we take beautiful pictures and we paste them all over the internet, and it's used in tourist advertising. But as Miss Charles told me at the time, when I kind of was complaining to her about what was going on, she said, oh, but Lennox, if you are making an omelet, you have to break eggs. That was her attitude. If you're making an omelet, you have to break eggs. And sure enough, I lived to see the day when you wouldn't even know that there was a dam there, because it's all grown over with vegetation between the rocks and also the sides of the, you don't even know there's a quarry there, because when you look behind the visitor center, all of that is trees. I'm just raising that to point out that, people think it's forever. But yes, there will be sacrifices that will have to be made. Yes, there will be parts of the landscape that will look terrible for a while. But as I said, Dominica has a way of recovering. Take, for instance, hardly anybody realizes this. T2 Gorge is a man-made thing. You used to walk up T2 Gorge on the ground. But when they were in 1954 putting in the first hydro plant, they built a big dam at the mouth of the gorge that you used to walk up. And they created, while they were creating a dam for the water to go in the pipes to go over to Trafalgar and to run the generators, what they were also creating was a beautiful pool for people. And that's the pool that everybody, tourists and all, use today. And you would never believe that this was so undisturbed. I mean, if you go to other things that are part natural, like the collapse of the road between Carhome and Cuba, the Cuba Road that was constructed, and the poor drainage, and the fact that the entire interior of the Matthew Ravine collapsed, and the sides of the Lai River also collapsed into each other to create a dam that became the Miracle Lake, they were calling it. And of course, there came a time, 1997 it was, that the Miracle Lake burst and collapsed. Dominica has seen so many of these things. Even if you take the North Coast, the fields of sugar cane in the days of sugar, none of those trees were there, It was just cleared entire sugar cane. So there, and then of course we don't even see that. We don't know that. And all the sugarcane factories, the 61 of them, most of them are in the bush, hidden in the forest. So you have to think maybe long term in this respect. Ideally, what I would have gone for was to have that plan of getting the aggregate from Coliho Ascola, put it in large barges like the ones that go to the Virgin Islands and wherever, taking it around Dominica, landing it at Woodford Hill within less than a mile of where you needed the aggregate. And you would not actually be damaging much except the continued silt around the quarries at the West Coast. It's an issue, you know, as I said to somebody when I told them you had invited me on this program, I said I will get my chalet, but you are damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't.
Yes, and
You know,
the thing is, if you would permit me just to interrupt you a bit, and going back to when the material was actually being taken from the general Debonch area within close proximity to what is going on right now, that blasting was done then, isn't that so?
Yes, there was major blasting.
Okay, fine.
And in fact, if you go down in the river, you will actually see the remnants of the sharp rocks. You know, when you blast
Yes.
rocks, they're very, very sharp. And that's another thing. If you go there today, you would hardly believe that the entire side on the Kalinago territory land was stripped. And there were these huge rocks that even slipped into the river. That's where some was taken. And the other part was taken on the other side of the river, of the Pegua River. And actually some of it was used by Gadakan and them to extend the bridge, to make the bridge wider, even after the whole airport project. Now, I said 1970, the Janin Company, but then in 1977, they had to come back to that same area to get aggregate. That was a company called Beaver. It was also a Canadian company because there was extra work to be done at Melville Hall. So you had the Janin Company in 1970, and you had the Beaver Group in 1977. But there again, I have to add, in all fairness, they were attacking the tongue of volcanic rock from a bit higher up.
Right.
So now the decision appears to be that you can get this material if you dig through the red clay, and you will get, because the whole ridge is made up of this igneous volcanic rock, very tough rock.
No.
That is aim. That's what they want.
No, the fact is, what we need to underscore here tonight is the fact that the activity that has been undertaken right now does not include blasting. So it's important for that to be underscored.
Well, yes, if that is the case, because certainly over on the other side, a little higher up the road, there was massive blasting. That is how they got their material. Yeah? So if now they are taking loose material that is also very, very hard, and they are going to use that, put it on the dumpers or put it into the machines and crush it.
Crushers, yeah.
Yeah. This is also an option. Of course, you see, the case is if you are doing that on the dry West Coast, you wouldn't have that red rock, red soil, because it's a different kind of geology on the West Coast. And it's drier, and there's no big river. It would flow into the sea as it does today. That is when they're accessing the rock there at Ascola and Coliho. So yes, all these things have to be taken into consideration. And it will be a mess. You just have to understand it will be a mess. But there's one thing that I feel is being confused with the quarrying of the aggregate. That is the whole story of mining. I think the people who are building this, they must make a clear difference, a clear separation that mining is not going on and will not go on, that this is entirely quarrying to get aggregate to finish the airport.
I think I think that point there need to be given currency there. I think is an excellent point. Mind you, you may explain something to the highest extent, and if people want to remain obstinate because of political persuasion, they are going to remain obstinate. But I think the comfort can be had by making a deliberate attempt to educate the general public. And I believe that is what I want to compliment you for here tonight. Placing all the facts down on the table and in a sequential manner, given a historical perspective, not only insofar as the pursuit of that dream that we have yearned for and is being effectuated right now before our eyes, but also tying the Debonch general area to similar activities, and where blasting was done, and today, and as you may be aware of, that the mitigating practices, sorry, are being put in place to ensure that one, the sedimentation of our river can be mitigated against, and slippage. That's why you see that massive returning wall, which in my view offers us some order, to me, idea as to maybe somehow we can look at the whole idea of reorienting that bridge when you're coming down from Debonch. Because when you come down from Debonch, approaching the bridge, you cannot see vehicles coming from the opposite direction. And that, in my view, thus speaking from a Dominican perspective, it is hard to set aside you being a minister talking on the program here tonight. But looking at it as a former minister for works, and I know the difficulty we had then when we were doing a lot too. That is to say, from the roundabout into Melvin Hall, and the challenges that we had with the logs being part of the foundation and coming down to the Debonch area. And I believe it provides a splendid option going forward. Maybe we can relook at reorienting the approach to the bridge and taking it straighter. I'm not sure what you're
Yes.
about that.
Well, actually, an engineer was discussing this very matter with me and pointing out that when you look at the bridge, the angle of the bridge, there has always been this problem, and that is why Janine went and bulldozed, not bulldozed, but blasted sections of that hard rock to provide a little more space for the road, because we have to understand that these roads, even the one that we use all the time going down Glugomye and Debonch, they were originally Kalinago tracks. They were little tracks, and you did not need much space. When the British came now in 1957, 58, they blasted a bit. They tried to open it up. The Janine Company came and blasted some and opened it a little bit, but it still is a corner, a kind of blind corner that you have to go around. So once again, there is the option that perhaps you could open up that corner, and at the same time you would be getting material to use for the runway project. I mean, ideally, it would be lovely if we didn't have to do any of this. But the fact of the matter is, if you go, there's a place I stop off by Palm Tree, and you can stand on that bluff, soon going to be bulldozed, but you can stand on that bluff and you can look to the southeast, you can look to the northwest, and you see the entire runway as it is now leveled. But when you think, your next thought must be, how is it going to be possible to seal that at the depth and thickness that you require for 777 Boeing or Aerospace 307 or whatever to touch down, land, and take that weight? This is the reason that this particular, you cannot go and seal a section of runway like that with tarish, with what is called pyroclastic flow. It will just turn to powder. It will crush. So that is why you need this very, very, very hard rock. And where you can get it, that's the difficulty. That is the challenge.
And I'm not. We're not trying. I'm not trying to insinuate there tonight that that one does not have to be mindful of the mitigating practices that must be adhered to. Okay, but just putting the facts on the table. I'm here tonight, and with a view of trying to because really and truly, we have gotten to a point. We are at a watershed moment in our development as a people, and I believe such a project should be a unifying project, because you're referencing the period of time that we have been talking about it, more than 50 years, and to see it being effectuated right now should be a unifying moment in our history as a people. And I believe if we can bring all the information out there, if you can get all the heads together, yes, you have a right to have a view. Yes, you have to hold the government accountable. Yes, you have to ensure that the mitigating practices are done and are adhered to. But at the same time, as you rightly said, you look at the options and you look at Dominica's topography and the geography, so to speak. Yes, they're unique, but they present a lot of difficulties also. And the trucking of the material is also can be an environmental issue. If you were to use trucks from the Colwell locality into the airport, that in itself can lend to further environmental hazards and problems. So it's a situation that calls for a certain degree of calmness and sanity, and at the same time looking at our national development, and which is a must. And then I believe if we can do that as adults, we can move forward.
Well, you brought up a point which was an issue in the days of Morris Bishop and Grenada. Morris Bishop took the Point Saline Airport, and Grenada was just like us. Pearls Airport was way up north. Took a long drive to get there. It was the size of Melville Hall. And then when the PRG under Morris Bishop decided they were going to embark on this very brave project, he turned it into something to unify people and turn it into a national project, a national thing with the backing of as many people as possible. Well, of course, he was killed before the airport finished, now bears his name. Another example, for instance, is Argyle with Ralph Gonzalez, who pushed it through many years because they didn't have the money immediately. They had to piece together funds. But he tried to do that as well, to make it some kind of national, prominent national effort. So yeah, those are things, issues to be considered. There was one.
It's 9:40 now. It's 9:40 now.
Yes.
We're talking to Dr. Lennox Ondichurch, of course, the Minister of National Security, on the second Thursday of every month, and the last Thursday we look at matters of significance. We look at legal matters and other matters related to the ministry. But we just felt that because of the significance of that project and some element of hoopla out there, and we just thought that maybe we can bring into the discussion a historic perspective and lay on the table how that general area they branch historically has been used to assist in our infrastructure development as a country. And so I want us to go to where we are now in a while before you made the point that you were about to make a while ago. Now that we are seeing something which to me was seen as an impossible task to have been undertaken, unfolding right now to the point where you're now seeing the runway. You're seeing elements of the terminal building being erected, and years ago, or even months ago, it was kind of difficult to have understood what was happening there, because if you're not somebody of an engineering mind, and maybe you want to, and that speaks to the difficulty of that project, and maybe you may want to actually add a little perspective to that. Now that you're seeing something that you have been part of during the Freedom Party days, something that you have studied, and now to the point you may have said before it was not going to happen. I'm not sure, and maybe you may want to you may want to qualify what I've said, or to add anything to it.
Yes, thank you. I never said that it would never happen, because as I say, from the early days with the Alexander Gilbert architects, they convinced me that this was the only part of Dominica. One Canadian engineer said, oh, well, if you took a section of Dominica and bulldozed everything into the sea to the width and size and length of an airstrip, you could also have done it, like go on the west coast or on the north. But these are dreams, these are ideas. The country has moved on beyond that. I would just like to add something, that the importance of the airport. I did not ever think in the past that the airport was so crucial. Melville Hall was providing, if we could have supplied more food to ship, and Melville Hall was providing under the days of O.J. Serafin and his DC-3 planes, taking stuff to the Virgin Islands from farmers and all that kind of stuff. It was easily done at Melville Hall. But the world is taking a new change now, and even the Caribbean. We have heard of the issues related to, which was just brought up at the Doha conference, the Davos conference in Switzerland, basically warning the world that things are not like they used to be. There's a major change, and that you have to think of all the ideas you can to keep your country, whether it is Canada, he calls it the middle power, the Prime Minister of Canada, or the micro power that these islands of the Caribbean are. And the prime ministers of the Caribbean are becoming less and less powerful individually, because of the fact that the economic pressures are so intense.
But I'm happy that you're making that point, but I want to do some. If you were to permit me, although I'm the host, but I want to do the most of the talking tonight. That Dominica, when you look at Dominica's location, Dominica is well located in air transport terms, Doctor. Being close to 3 of the main Caribbean region hubs, you're talking about San Juan, Antigua, and Barbados. As well as you're talking about the French islands, or the French departments of Guadeloupe and Martinique. So it provides for connection to North America, to Europe, the wider Caribbean, and Southern America. You get my point. So the prospects, therefore, for having an international airport. So I see, looking at it from a mere Dominican perspective, looking at it, where Dominican can become one of the major centers for not only North America but for different parts of the world. But once you're in Dominica, you can hop onto a plane to take you to Europe or North America or South America, and I think that is just That we didn't.
Yeah, well, those are all things to consider, but I'm just saying that basically the way the world is moving now, individual small nation states are going to have to work and use every possible opportunity they can for their development. I'm not, and that an international airport is one of these things.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have spoken so strongly 10, 15, 20 years ago. But the way the world is going now, you know you cannot, if you are going to provide your country with the education, the investment, the health care, and all the other things that a small nation requires, you cannot lie back and hope for the best. You've got to really put your back to the wheel. And this project is one of them, you know.
Let,
So they're, those are the main things that I basically wanted to enunciate because we, it must be finished. And the thing is, if it drags, we won't have the money. The money to finish it is going to be more difficult to obtain with every month that passes, because the previous governments, Eugenia Charles, the UWP, even Mr. Barron in his day when he wanted to extend Melville Hall. The fact of the matter is that they didn't have the money. The access to funds was not as prevalent as it is today. And even today, you know, we don't know what will happen by the end of this year. So that's why it is so crucial that the airport continue in the speed that it's continuing. I see it every day. I hear it going on at night. So I know that it's happening and I follow it very closely indeed. But it is crucial that that is completed as soon as possible because we don't know what the world condition and economy for us is going to be like by the end of the year
yes.
or even into next year.
Excellent point. And we have a number of people following us on Facebook, on DBS Radio's Facebook page, Dr. Honeychurch. And I'm not going to actually reference all the comments there, but I'm going to take a negative one. And not very negative. And this person is Michael John, and he's saying that there are two of us on the panel, but none of us are actually environmentalists. So he's saying that you're not an environmentalist. What is that?
Well,
Someone like with immense background. It's,
that's okay. I mean, people say I'm not an engineer, but I've studied every engineering report since 1888 when the Public Works Department was established. And let us also understand that I contributed, I don't publicize these things, but the team that was doing the EIA for this airport, there was a rather elderly head of the group. And we had to go down into ravines, and I was obviously much younger than him at the time. And I assisted with all of that. I have reports on the whole question of the area's outflow below Wesley and the challenge to fishermen, for instance, which I've heard discussed currently. The warning that, you know, access to things like conch shell, lambi, and lobsters and all those things were going to be impacted by the flooding. So although I am not specifically an environmentalist, but in my anthropological work, which was to do with people, human beings in all parts of the world, and the effects of climate on them and their societies, and also the decisions they made and how it affected the culture and the livelihoods. I've done all of that. So if I don't have a big environmental officer name behind me, I still have a great deal of knowledge in relation to this. And as I said, I've contributed to that. You can even ask Mr. Roye of the Agricultural Department Ministry, um, because he was linked with me or linked with me in that area. So it's a valid point. It's a valid point. But the fact is that we're over halfway gone.
Yes.
And I know that there are complaints um, these EIAs were not approved, some people say, and some parties say there was no EIA. But I know there was because I contributed to it, because I was asked to be a field officer going down in places like Priest Gutter and Craibo Bay and Sophia Bay and Bottom Wesley and all of that, and explaining what are the species that are there, what kind of animals exist there, all these things. I mean, I've got it, I can print it out and give it to anybody. So it's just a great challenge, because it's where you find these development projects that there's an environmental aspect which is of grave concern. And then there's the area of completing a project. And I've made points like the freshwater lake and other road projects, huge landslides in Bells in 1950s that you pass there today. And although there's still issues, you wouldn't know that that they existed at the time. So I'm leaving it there really for now, because we've raised quite a lot of issues.
Yes.
And I just feel that, as I say when I'm doing history, I say, to understand Dominica, you must understand the topography, the landscape, the difficulty. Why is it that we were the last place in the Caribbean to even have a general airport? I'm talking about a small airport. Why were we the last one that had to have planes landing on the sea at Portsmouth and Soufriere? The topography. It's the topography. Why can I remember going in a launch to get to Portsmouth? Because the roads could not be built, because there was no money, and also the fact that the terrain was so difficult that it was virtually impossible. So, all these things have to be considered, and that's why I say, as if you're going to study Dominica, the one thing you have got to study first is the topography, the volcanology, the way in which the island was created and put together with the volcanic activity and the different types of rocks and soils. And also, and we're going to find it in this project, that Dominica is peppered with little springs, roots of water flowing through that red clay. And this makes it great. We have beautiful fresh springs. Everybody stops and fills their bottle on the hill there in Glugomie above Bells. But that water, pure as it is coming through an underground channel, like a vein in your body. And there are veins all over Dominica. And you've got to deal with these issues and understand them. So I will leave that there.
Yes, remarkable. I'm not sure if that's 1 minute. If anybody wants, we have a number of people who have been making comments on DBS's Facebook page. But if anybody wants to call, we have 2 more minutes. The number is 448-3284 or 1-800-327. And we need 2 more minutes to meet Dr. Honeychurch if you want to call, because what we wanted to do here tonight was to have allowed Dr. Honeychurch to have his thing and to elevate the discussion a bit, and to insert a certain degree of sanity into the discussion. And as I said just now, I mean, you put all the information there, and there are some people who may not be inclined to so accept the information because of other issues, and that's fine. But in the main, I believe it was a very useful discussion here tonight, and most of the people who listened, who was still listening, benefited a lot from what you have said. And it's an experiment. Building Dominica, as you have said, is an experiment, and in an experiment, you have to continue ensuring that you adhere to the best practices possible. And the result, if you want to realize a particular result, you have to embark on a particular methodology. And I believe that the fact that you're saying that you're sitting in the airport right now, before you leave, just tell us, you go into the site now, as you have done before. What's eminent in your mind when you go to the site? As you see the project in itself unfolding, what is eminent in your mind, Dr. Honeychurch?
Well, it's the fact that the original plan, which existed since 1988 and which has been adapted, the challenge is, it's basically the challenges to see the way in which the challenges have been dealt with and accomplished. 7 watersheds crossing that land to be able to make an area of flat land that is capable of.
Good evening, Dr. Honeychurch. Good evening.
Yeah.
You're live on DBS Radio. Hello? Hello? Good evening. Hello?
Hello, good night.
Good night.
It's Honorable Blackmoore. Good night.
How are you doing, sir?
I am very good. I'm very good. I'm listening to your program. And I just want to say something that Dr. Honeychurch mentioned earlier on. And that is the explanation and the difference between mining and quarrying. And apparently, the so-called, the so-called geologists or scientists or soil scientists that give their different opinions. I personally, I want to make mention of, do you know the West Coast roads, Honorable Blackmoore?
Well, I'm from the West Coast, man. I'm from the West Coast.
From Layu all the way down to at least Point Round. If you knew the vegetation that had been there before, the type of topography that is between Layu and Point Round. I walked on that road from Layu up to Tibet. And we traversed all the roads, all the rivers. Most of the debris and dirt that was coming from that road ended up in rivers and in the sea. And if you look now at the rivers, at the sea, you will not know, you will not even remember that a road project was being built there. So there has development. There has to be a price to pay for development. I'm not saying that we have to damage. The country is not being damaged. I do remember, I spent 39 years in the Public Works Department. And I do remember, as Dr. Honeychurch mentioned, the Jennings Company and the Beaver Company. I do remember those two road projects. I think both of them are Canadian company, both of them.
Yes,
and
Canadian.
There was this mining area being done in the Deboche area. I can remember when that big corner going to the bridge was being excavated to get rocks, and at the same time for the realignment of that road going to the bridge. Today, right now, the bridge, because of that, I believe the bridge has been accommodating a 2-lane surface now. Had not that been done before, it would not have accommodated this type of expansion to the Deboche Bridge. So, you know, and the mitigating factors that I heard and I saw that the minister explained last week, that is enough to show that nothing is being done in and not being thought of the area. You know, and it's a shame that, you know, a project like this has been getting so much negative negative setbacks because of and I know. Mr. Blackmoore, bear with me a little. I'm going to explain something to you in 2 minutes.
Okay, go ahead.
There was a project being done to resurface the runway in St. Thomas. The company who did that job, I was attached to that company. The quarry in which they removed, they got the material. Sometimes the material was rejected. The asphalt was rejected because the stones that were used did not have the proper density for the surfacing, for the mixing of the asphalt for use on the airport runway. So the type of stones that the companies or whatever are looking for, if that is the place that it can be found, so be it. But I know for a fact that any type of rocks, any type of stone cannot be crushed to use for a 737 that is landed at about 150 miles an hour. It is going to tear apart that surface, and then what happens after? They're going to say, "Oh, poor job. The stones are not readily the type of stone that they were looking for," and then what is going to happen? The aviation people are going to say, "Okay." So it happened here recently that the airport had to be closed down because of certain type of material that was used on the airport runway, and the airport had to be closed. The runway had to be closed for some time. So we don't want that to happen in our country, Dominic. So I just want to say these two pieces of knowledge that I personally know, and then I'm listening to somebody might refute what I said, but I know facts are facts. And thank you. Good night.
Thank you very much, sir, and God bless you. Thank you very much. Yes, Dr. Henrichurch, very interesting call.
Oh, yes. And, these things that he was just saying can be backed up with photographs. I have a whole set of photographs of the West Coast Road. And in those days, they just dump everything, not like today where you put it in the dumper and take it somewhere else. All the coast was just covered with stuff that had been bulldozed and thrown over all the way through into.
It appears that they want to keep you here tonight. Pastor Ben.
No,
time.
That is one thing.
Good night.
That is one thing
Good night,
I cannot engage in because by 10 o'clock.
Yeah, good night. Good night.
By 10 o'clock, I have
to go now. Good night. Yes, you're live.
Yeah, Mr. Blackmoore, good show tonight. Mr. Honeychurch, how are you doing?
Thank you very much. Fine.
Mr. Honeychurch, I hear you mention the word mining. Mining. Am I right?
Well,
Do you?
I mentioned it in relation to that a clear
distinction
in the public knowledge. A clear separation has to be made to make it clear that this is not mining. It all began in. Let me just briefly do this. It began in 1960s when there was a geological survey for the entire Dominica, and what came up were David Lang was the geologist, and there were others who also contributed to it, that there were trace elements of copper in that zone. And from that time, that discussion has been, it continues and it rises and it falls. So for instance, here in the documentation I've got here, in 1970, it's the Star newspaper of April 18th, 1970. It says copper mine secret out. And it's a Canadian company that wanted to test. Everything is testing because even in the 1990s, there was no confirmation that there was enough volume to have a full open cast copper mine, which would be a terrible environmental issue. All of that is true. And so, as I say, I could read the whole article from 1970. Then we had the issues when Afi Marquez defended that section of Dominica and the site. So I do not think it is wise to engage in any mining or any following for tests of copper. It is extremely damaging. So when I said mining, I essentially was saying that. That was a section that you were picking up. Quarrying is one thing. You quarry, you choose a site that has the beneficial rock formation. Look, we're opening up a big new quarry at Bulo on the west coast. The whole estate is being taken over for quarrying at Bulo on the west coast. So these are the differences. And what I am appealing is that no kind of thought be given to trying to exploit the few little sections where there is coral. There's jasper in Dominica. There's fool's gold down by Belfie Bridge there on the road to Castle Bruce. There's a massive amount of trace elements of different types of minerals and geology. But that doesn't mean that they are sufficient to open an industry.
Okay, so are you going to ask the question because we have to move on? Yes, go ahead, please.
Mr. Honeychurch, I'm happy that you explained it the way you did. I hope we could put that mining thing to rest once and for all. Because, Mr. Blackmoore, I always tell myself, when they say, the Chinese are mining, where is it being processed? Are they putting it in a container and send it to China, or they have a cave somewhere where it's being processed? Because everybody talk about the mining. Where is it being processed? So, Mr. Honeychurch, thank you for explaining, and I hope we could put that nonsense about mining to rest tonight. Thank you. Have a blessed night.
Have a nice night.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening.
Now, Mr. Blackmoore, I have to get transport.
Yes, because there's no internet. Yes, there's
10
there's
o'clock.
I want to really express my gratitude to you, Dr. Honeychurch, for taking time off here tonight to come here, because I know you normally go to bed early, and then and you have no internet. Your internet at your home is intermittent, and you have to go to buy.
Yes, I have to go to somebody else.
So, and it speaks to your commitment to this country's development, and for that I'm so glad. And thank you to our listeners for joining us here tonight. I believe it was a very instructive interaction here tonight, and a number of people, everybody who listened, including those who were sending some negative commentary on the Facebook page. I'm certain that they benefited from your lecture here tonight. I call it a lecture. And may the good Lord continue to bless you. And of course, as you have said before, it's very amazing to see a journey that we have been traversing for so long, Dr. Honeychurch. We are about to see the end of that journey, where we are going to have the completion of this international airport. And that, in my mind, is the dawn of a new day for all of us, irrespective of our political colors. And we'll continue to have that kind of discussion on our program within the ministry on DBS Radio, where we can bring in people with the requisite expertise to actually try to bring some level of sanity to some important matters that are before the public. And that is one of those. And I want to say good evening to you, and thank you very much for being here tonight. Thank you to our listeners, and we shall meet again some other time. Hopefully, next week Thursday, we're hoping to have the chairman of the Electoral Commission to be engaging in the next some very important discussion. We will be speaking about confirmation. And so, have a nice night, Dr. Honeychurch, and thank you to your neighbor for granting you that favor here tonight, which all of us benefited from. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
All the best.
Yes. Good night.